Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're exploring something I think a lot of us wonder about. How do our deepest relationships, especially with family, really shape who we become? And how can those really intense, sometimes kind of complicated experiences, how can they lead us down unexpected paths? Towards self-discovery, maybe, and even powerful ways of telling our own stories. Our source material for this deep dive is a review of Mother Mary Comes to Me. It's the new memoir from the acclaimed author Arundhati Roy. The book itself is 352 pages and is actually set to be published on September 2nd, 2025. So our mission today really is to unpack the core insights from this very personal, very outspoken memoir. We want to pull out the key ideas about motherhood, identity, rebellion, legacy, give you a shortcut basically to understanding its potential impact.
Yeah, and what's so compelling about a memoir, especially one like this seems to be, is that it gives you this incredibly intimate window, a look into themes that feel very personal but are actually, universal. The source material describes the tone as intense, poetic, intimate, and outspoken, which is already quite a mix. But it also points out this interesting duality. It says it swings between being sensitive but tough, emotional but clear. That kind of balance right there suggests it's going to be a really nuanced exploration, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Nuanced is the word. And the way the memoir starts is, well, it's powerful. It doesn't begin at a birth, it begins at a death. Arundhati Roy starts with her mother, Mary Roy, passing away.
Right.
Mary Roy herself was this accomplished educator and activist.
Yeah.
And the author says, quite directly, my mother's death broke me, and I started to write.
Mm.
What do you think that choice tells us right away about the book's intention, maybe beyond just telling a life story? It feels like it's less about simple grief and more, I don't know, a profound question that kind of kicks off the whole writing process.
Yeah, that opening definitely sets a different stage. Right from the get-go, it signals this isn't just going to be a chronological telling of a life. It's an exploration driven by the aftermath, the aftermath of this huge event. By starting with that rupture, Roy seems to be inviting us to see how someone's absence can actually, paradoxically, illuminate their presence. And Mary Roy, clearly, she wasn't just any mother. She sounds like a formidable figure. I mean, the source notes she successfully sued her own family to get property rights for Christian women in India, founded a school.
Wow.
Yeah. But the memoir apparently doesn't shy away from the complexities. It shows her as sometimes harsh, maybe cold, even rigid. Roy doesn't seem to be mythologizing her. It sounds like she's really trying to humanize her, warts and all.
Right, humanizing her. You mentioned she's depicted as harsh, rigid sometimes, but Arundhati chooses to humanize, not create a myth. Which brings us to this really pivotal moment. Despite her mother's huge impact, young Arundhati made this, crucial decision. She writes, I ran away at 18 so that I could continue to love her. How does the book handle that? Showing the difficult parts, but still conveying this deep, if complicated, love. That act of running away not as rejection, but to preserve love. What does that tell us about their bond?
It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? The memoir seems to offer this powerful perspective on identity. It suggests that finding your own way isn't always about, totally rejecting the people who shaped you. Sometimes it's about redefining how you connect with them. So maybe a healthier kind of love can actually survive. Roy left Kerala, studied architecture, eventually wrote The God of Small Things, of course. But the source really emphasizes that even as she was finding her own voice, her mother's influence, or maybe shadow, was kind of everywhere. In her writing, her silences, her struggles, Roy apparently talks about how she had to go to find myself, to write, to breathe. It really shows that sometimes you need that distance, that space for real self-discovery, even if the influence itself never fully goes away.
That's a key point, internalizing those traits, even the difficult ones. The source mentions Mary's final days in 2022. It says they're depicted with compassion and truth. And there isn't some big, dramatic, movie-style reconciliation. It's just a daughter watching her mother transform, as the book puts it, from a storm into a whisper. And Roy reflects on this time, saying, she was leaving, and I was still angry, still surprised, which implies that even right at the very end, the relationship kept all its complexity. What's compelling about not having that neat, tidy ending?
That image from a storm into a whisper, gosh, that's incredibly evocative. It suggests that even the most turbulent relationships can find a different kind of truth later on, a quieter one. Not necessarily through some big reconciliation scene, but maybe just a subtle shift in how they're seen or felt. It also really speaks to the memoir's commitment to honesty, I think. Honesty over sentimentality. Roy presents the reality of this lifelong bond full of friction and love, and it keeps that complex texture right up to the last moment.
So after all this exploration, how does Mother Mary Comes to Me ultimately reframe Arundhati Roy's own journey? her own story. In the final chapters, apparently, she reflects on her writing, her struggles, her own legacy. And the memoir reveals that her mother's stubbornness, her passion, they now live inside her. But she says it's not as a burden, but as a map. She sums it up beautifully. She was my refuge and my storm. Now she is my story. That suggests quite a remarkable transformation in how she sees it all. Does the source explain how that shift happened, from burden to map? Or is it presented more as just the outcome?
Well, the source doesn't lay out like a step-by-step guide to that transformation. It's not therapy, right? But that final realization Roy comes to, she was my refuge and my storm. Now she is my story. That itself delivers a really profound insight. It suggests that these incredibly complex, even conflicted relationships, they aren't just things you have to endure, they're the raw material. And when you process it, it becomes the blueprint for your life's narrative, maybe even a source of unique strength.
Finding agency in your own story.
Exactly, even when it's deeply tangled up with someone else's. And yeah, the book's core insights, as the source presents them, are pretty striking. The writing style, poetic, sharp, emotionally deep. The themes we touched on, motherhood, identity, feminism, grief, rebellion, legacy. And that tone we discussed, sensitive but tough, emotional but clear, it seems like it's that whole package, that balance, that makes this memoir sound so impactful.
Yeah, reflecting on all this, Mother Mary comes to me, sounds like it's definitely more than just recounting events. It's a truly profound exploration of very complex relationship. And that writing style, poetic, sharp, and emotionally deep, you can almost feel how it would bring that complexity to life.
It really sounds like it does. The source even goes so far as to say the memoir isn't just a book you read. It says it functions as a mirror, a storm, a song, which really encapsulates how multifaceted and impactful this narrative seems to be. It kind of invites you, the reader, to see bits of your own journey reflected in it.
And maybe for you, listening right now, perhaps this deep dive, much like the memoir itself, sounds like maybe it'll change the way you see your own story just a little bit.
Yeah.
So here's something to ponder as you go about your day. Consider this. How have the people who've been both your refuge and your storm in life, how have they ultimately shaped the map of who you are and the story that, well, you're still writing?